Welcome back to the IU427 garage, everybody. Well, I don't know if you can hear that, but it's a rainy day here in Southern California. We've got the rain beating down on the roof, and even though the shop is pretty well insulated, you can still hear the rain coming down on the metal tin roof. So what we're going to work on today is the Type 65 Coupe. I'm waiting on a new tubing bender to start on the fuel lines, even though in the last video on the Coupe you saw me do the tube straightening and we got the fuel pump and the fuel sending unit all squared away. But I really want to wait for that new tubing bender because I think it's going to make my life a little easier bending those tubes to the front of the car. So I'm hoping that's going to show up this week and then I can get on the fuel lines. However, I have started on the brake master cylinder reservoir, and so I'm going to show you exactly what it's going to take to get that thing installed today. Okay, so this is the unit that we're going to be installing, and I talked to my buddy Paul Bohr, who most of you are going to know by his screen name on the Factory 5 forum, which is Edward B. And I found this in a box in all of the parts for this car, even though it had a reservoir previously mounted in it. So I don't know whether this was an afterthought or whether this was something that they wanted to do, but they didn't get the part in time. It's always hard to say without knowing, you know, and this isn't a question that I've asked the car owner yet. However, this is the unit that he said he wanted installed. Now, before we did that, we had to do a little disassembly because, like I said, there was a reservoir mounted, and it had been mounted pretty much like it's described in the Factory 5 installation manual, where the two master cylinders are brought together with a T and then go to a single reservoir, and so that T is right here, or Y in this in this case. Now, the reservoir is sitting over here, and you can see I've got a bunch of different projects I'm working on. This tube is for the Mark IV, the King Cobra build, but here is the reservoir, and this wasn't mounted. It was just kind of tucked into the top of the foot box, and then it had this tube that was going into it, and this end went into that Y fitting. There was brake fluid in here, and brake fluid is just nasty stuff. If you get it on your hands, it makes your hands itch. If you get it on paint, it peels the paint. So do whatever you can to minimize getting that brake fluid on anything you don't want it to get on. I had it all over my hands last night. Washed my hands before dinner, and during dinner, my hands were still itchy. So I don't know whether I'm just allergic to it or whether it's just that nasty of stuff. Regardless, we got that all pulled apart, and then what I've done is I've made myself a template because I want to mount this thing very similar to the way Paul mounted the one in his Gen 3 Coupe. And so I hit him up, and he told me that he indeed mounted it with riv nuts. And so I only want to do this once. The space in here is limited, and I cannot use my riv nut puller. It just won't fit in here. No matter what angle I put it in, it's just not going to fit. So I'm going to have to put these in with my old trusty manual tool, and I'll show you what that looks like once I get these installed. And then what I did is I took the actual master cylinder itself, right here, I placed it in here, and I stuck my torpedo level on top of it. And then what I did was I took these two bolts that go all the way through the tank, and I pushed on them to make an indent in my cardboard. Now this is the easiest way that I know of to transfer those through. Now, if you have transfer punches, you can mark them with those. The problem is you can't get a hammer or anything to strike the transfer punches through that master cylinder and indent them onto the actual template. With the template here, what I can do is I can actually take this, I can drill my holes in the cardboard, and then I can go ahead and mark the frame with a metallic silver Sharpie. I love these things because they're almost like paint markers, and they make perfect lines onto black powder coating. And if you need to get them off, a little acetone or lacquer thinner and they'll come right off. So do yourself a favor, don't only just buy the black Sharpies, but buy a couple of the silver metallics. They're quite a bit more money. I think a pack of 4 of these was like $6, but they last a good long time, and then you're not going to use them for everything. So get a couple of these for your build, because I think they work really well. So that's what I'm going to do on that. As soon as I get those marks transferred onto the chassis of the car, I'll bring it back and I'll show you what it looks like with the riv nuts, the threaded inserts, already installed. So here you go. I drilled some 1/8" holes in there first on the center lines of my marks, and then I followed those up with a 1/4" drill bit, and then I took my silver Sharpie and I transferred those lines through. Now, you're going to have to get really creative when you drill in here, because there's not a whole lot of space here. So I can take my right angle drill and I can drill both of those with my 1/8" drill bit, because I use the double-ended shorties. But when you get to your 1/4", that's when you start running into issues. So I do have a couple of shortened, and I've made these over the years, shortened drill bits. So this one is shorter than normal. I have one even shorter than this that I'm going to use to make those holes into the chassis for that frontmost hole, because there's just no way to get a drill and a standard size bit in there. Now, I suppose you could use like one of the 12" long bits, and I have some of those, but I think I only have a 9" long one and 1/4 inch, which would be really close. But the problem is you're coming in at an angle, and even with a pilot hole, the bit itself is kind of want to drift down as you're drilling and not go straight. So I'm gonna use a really short 1/4" drill bit to get that in there. Now, when I have to enlarge that hole for my riv nut, I'm gonna probably end up using a step bit, because I don't think I'm gonna have any other choice. And the problem with a step bit is that it's not gonna be the perfect size. And so I might have some trouble getting that riv nut to pull, because it needs a little bit of friction with the tool that I'm gonna show you to get the riv nut to set. And we'll see. All right, so I think it's possible the owner and his buddy that was helping him had previously tried to start mounting this thing. But by the looks of it, their mounting hole was going to be really high, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to get these somewhat level while the car is sitting at ride height. So if you look at the bubble on the top of my riv nuts, I'm level. But the car itself is not. And you can see just how much this frame rail is out. So in what is that, an 8" torpedo level, it's out almost 3/4 inch. So you really have to make sure that you get these riv nuts in where you want them, so that when all is said and done and the car's sitting at ride height, that the fluid in all 3 chambers of the reservoir are about the same. So that's what we did. And like I said, there was a previous hole here, and so since it's going to be covered up, I wasn't too worried about that. I'll probably take some black paint, I'll put it on a Q-tip, I'll put some paint on that raw metal so it doesn't rust in the future, and it'll be fine. But our riv nuts are installed, and this is the tool right here that I fabricated many years ago. I pulled I don't know how many riv nuts with this tool, and so it's just a scrap piece of aluminum. This is 1/4" by 1, and I bent a little handle basically on the end of it so that I can hold on to it even when it's flat. You know, I'm not forced to hold it with fingers. I can actually get my hand around it here and keep it from spinning. And then I have a series of holes in the end of it. So I've got a 3/8 hole, I've got a 1/4" hole it's going through now, I've got a 10 by 32 or a 10 by 24 hole there, and then I've got a smaller hole over here for 832. And all you do is you end up with whatever size bolt you're going to run through to pull the rivet nut in itself, and then you stack some washers, and in between those stacked washers you just want to make sure you put some lubricant like some axle grease or white lithium grease. Hell, even WD-40 will work, because generally you're only pulling one or two of these, and you just have to make sure that you keep it lubed for each one of the ones that you do. Like I said, the problem is that if the holes that you drill in the chassis or whatever frame member you're going into are too big, the rivet nut's going to want to spin, because it's going to spin right here against this flat. There's really nothing to hold it. So what you can do in a pinch is take your channel locks or your vice grips, grip the outside edge of your rivet nut as you're starting it, just to the point where it's stuck against the bottom side of the tool, and then go ahead and insert it and then keep turning. And basically it's all a matter of feel with these things, because if you overdo it, you will actually pull the threads out of, let's say, an aluminum rivet nut. We're using steel rivet nuts in this case. It's a little bit harder to mess up the threads, but you can pull those threads out if you get a little carried away. And especially with a bolt like this that is fine thread. So this is 1/4 by 24. So 24 threads per inch. It'll easily pull those threads out. So once you feel that you've got it compressed enough on the inside of the frame member or the chassis, stop. And then back your bolt out, run it again, make sure you haven't boogered up the threads, and then pull it out for the final time, and just make sure that the threads are good before you overdo it and pull the threads right out. So we're about ready to put this thing in, and I ended up drilling them out to 1/8 inch, and I was able to drill this one with my shortened 1/4 inch long bit and the right angle drill. Over here it would not fit. So I ended up having to go with my smallest step bit and get it as close as I could, and then I had to switch over to my medium-sized step bit, go one more step, which did. It brought it out a little big, and then I got my rivet nut to seat. So these are both set right now. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to grab some paint. I'm going to touch up the inside of this hole just to get that covered with some paint, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to mount the reservoir in place. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some appliance epoxy. I like this stuff because it dries really quick, and it seems to seal the surface. So you don't have to do a whole lot of priming with this stuff, and so for little touch-ups like this, it's great, especially in areas where it's going to be hidden. This is gloss black. The frame, the chassis is like a matte finish or a satin finish, but it's going to be behind that reservoir anyway, so I'm not too worried about the difference in color. And then I'm not going to spray it on. I'm actually going to spray some in the lid right here, right in the center. And that's just so I can dip my Q-tip in there, get some paint on it, so you can see there's paint on it now. And I'm going to really get paint all inside here and around the outside. Now this stuff is really thin, so you might find that you gotta put more than one coat on, but that's not a big deal because it dries quick. And I think we may be able to just get away with one coat, but we'll see. All right, so that's done. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to line these up with my two rib nuts, and I'm going to start sending them in just hand tight, and then I'll tighten them up with a ratchet. There's just no room to get your fingers in here. Damn it. It'll get started just a little, and then doesn't want to catch. That's the third time it's done that. It's just not going in there. That's the problem. You know, trying to get, it'd be one thing if I had room in here, but because everything's just so tight, it's really hard to get your hands, your fingers, everything in here. All right, it's in. I've got the bolts, so it's nice and tight and secure. I did not put Loctite on these. One of the reasons I didn't was that I thought I might have to remove this to raise it up once we start putting fluid in, and so I'll probably put Loctite in at that time. It's not easy getting those bolts to line up perfectly, but it was taking a little more patience than I had, and so I took a little break, came back to it, and got them in. So the next thing I think I'm going to do is I'm going to get the template made. I've got to take all the tubes through this hole where the clutch cable would come out, and I'm probably going to make a paper template and then get that all mocked up, and then probably in that piece that I'm going to use, I'm going to make 3 individual holes for the 3 individual tubes that are going to come out of each part of the reservoir, and I'm going to have to reduce those down. Well, I was talking with Paul about what he did. He said to me that he used what he thought was 5/16 tubing from the Masters to his reservoir. Now, I can't get 5/16 tubing to fit onto the Wilwood Master cylinders snugly. And I can't get 5/16 to go over the nipples that are coming out of the bottom of the reservoir. Though the reservoirs want 3/8 tubing, the master cylinders want 1/4 inch tubing. So what I did is I purchased a couple of these reducers. So they're 3/8 on one side, they're 1/4 inch on the other, and I'm actually going to reduce these once they make their way into the foot box. So there'll be 3/8 on the outside of the foot box, there'll be 1/4 inch on the inside. And then what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to order up some hose clamps, and they're called cinch or clinch type hose clamps. And so if you've seen those in the past, a lot of times if you order a new fuel pump and you get a new Z-tube with it, it'll come with those clinch type hose clamps. And so you can use a pair of end nippers. You can actually use a pair of side cutters in order to tighten those down too. They're one-time use, but I found that they're very tight and compact around the outside of the tubing. And depending on where you cinch them down, you can make them look prettier. And then since they don't take up a whole lot of room, they kind of disappear when you use them rather than a standard worm type clamp. Now, I don't have a problem with the standard clamps on the inside of the foot box, but out here where everything's going to be seen, I think I want to use those cinch on or cinch down hose clamps instead, because I think it's just going to look cleaner. So I'm going to take this back out now that I've got it all in and I know it fits, and I'm going to work on getting this template made for all of our hoses to pass into the foot box, and hopefully get them connected to the master cylinders as well. All right, so this is the template that I came up with. Basically, it was the same outer diameter of the piece that I had, and you usually get these I know they come in the Mark IV kit, basically to cover up this opening if you don't use it for the clutch cable. I had one of them upstairs, so I used it to make this template. And then of course I've cut out the center because that's where I need the 3 hoses to come through. However, those 3 hoses, I'm going to go ahead and transpose those 3 holes onto my actual piece after I cover it with masking tape. So I'll basically have the outline of this for my pattern, and then I'll make sure the 3 hoses fit within the confines of this center opening. But this fits in here just the way I want it. So I had to nip the corner of it to get it in there where I want it, and it doesn't hang below this tube right here, so it's gonna fit just perfect. What I'm gonna end up having to do is drill this rivet out, and then I'll replace that rivet with one of the rivets that are actually gonna hold this trim piece in when I'm all done. All right, I've been working on this thing for a while. This little piece, start to finish, took me about an hour and 45 minutes. And it's not done. So I've probably got another 45 minutes to an hour in dressing this thing out, and then I'm gonna paint these raw edges, not because they're gonna rust, but just because they'll blend in better. And a little trick that you can use to do that is you can actually take a black marker or black Sharpie and go around and cover that raw aluminum with the ink. And it helps to like dull the brightness of the shiny silver finish on the aluminum. Or you can do the same trick that I use on this hole inside the frame here and just spray a little bit in the cap of the can for the spray paint, and you use a Q-tip as a brush and kind of brush the stuff on it. It helps to be able to control it a little bit better than just, you know, trying to mask it off and just going after it with the spray. The Q-tip makes it real easy to get in there, and you can do the same thing around here. However, I'm probably just going to use the black marker and get this thing all cleaned up that way. Now, this thing fits in here really good. I've actually been over to back and forth from the car at least a dozen times getting this thing to fit. And I've got room for all 3 hoses to go through there. So I'm just about ready to mark where all of my holes are going to go. And then I'll Cleco it in place with a couple of Clecos. And then I want to double check to make sure all 3 of my hoses are going to pass through there with no problem. Then I'll take it back off. I'll clean it up a little bit more just to make sure there's no sharp edges that the hoses might end up wearing through. And then it'll go in. All right, so you can see I've got a piece installed here. I've got the edges pretty well cleaned up now. So I'm gonna grab some hose. I'm gonna make sure I can get 3 hoses through there because you know, I cut it for the outside diameter of the hoses, but yeah, I want it to be snug because I don't want it to leak a whole bunch of air. I don't have a problem coming back here in the corners and you know, putting a little bit of silicone, black silicone, to seal off those little areas so they don't leak. But at the same time, the tighter it can be, but not cutting into the hose is the goal. Now, these 3, so the top, this one, and this bottom one over here, I think I'll be able to get those rivets in with my rivet gun, no problem. This bottom one, however, right here, I don't think I can get my rivet gun in there. So what I'm probably going to do is pull this piece off, drill the bottom hole in the foot box out to 3/16. Then when this piece goes back on, I'll pre-install the bottom rivet. So really it's not going to do anything. It's just going to look as though it's supposed to be that way, because I don't want to put it in without a rivet in there because it'll look like shit. The 3 rivets that are on there will be more than enough to hold it on tight. And don't forget, there'll be some silicone sealant behind this to act as an adhesive. And if I have to, I'll get in here and I'll get my big clamp, my big vice grip clamp down over the outside and put that on there to hold everything tight until the silicone dries. So that's probably all I'm going to be able to do today. But I do want to verify that 3 of the hoses are going to fit through there before I go through any more fabrication or any more installation, because tearing this all apart and starting over is hard enough, but tearing stuff apart to backtrack is going to be that much harder. So I'd rather make sure it all fits now than put it all together and find out it don't fit. There you go, three tubes through the hole. Let's see, can't really see it all that great from this side. You can see a little bit better from this side. So I've got all 3 hoses through there. Down here, you can see the bottom hose right there. And they'll make a transition right here at the end of those hoses, and then they'll step down to the 1/4-inch hose that's feeding all the masters. Now, I measured these, and this should be enough for a small service loop to go into the bottom of the reservoir that's going right here. But I've got more of this hose. Now, the hose, you want to make sure that any hose you get is compatible with brake fluid. And so what I did is I went back to what Wilwood supplies with their master cylinders, and it's this hose right here. It's the Gates Plant Master 250. And of course, this is 1/4-inch. This is the same hose in black right here, made in USA. And that's what was supplied with the Factory 5 Mark IV and Type 65 Coupe kits. And then I've got some more of it here in black. So make sure that whatever hose you use is compatible. So see, it's the same hose, Plant Master 250 in 1/4-inch. Is the exact same hose, just in 3/8. And like I said, as soon as I can secure some of those cinch down clamps for the hoses, I'll get this thing installed for hopefully the final time. So I'm probably going to order a new fitting for this. I do have a call into the car owner because this whole kit is supposedly provided by Mike Forte. So that means that the master, the fittings, the braided hose, and the clutch slave cylinder, all that stuff should have been included with the kit, but I don't have any of it here. So I'm hoping that the previous builder has that stuff so that we don't have to order it. But if all fails, then I can order a new fitting. I believe this is a 1/8-inch, what is it, 8 by 27 NPT, and then we can get a fitting that goes from that directly to an AN3 from a company called All-Star. I think you can get it from Wilwood too, but we'll see if we can get those fittings from the previous builder and then install that stuff and at least get the masters bled to this point, because from here down it's a piece of cake. The hardest part is getting the fluid to here. I think next time we're going to be working on the fuel lines, so be sure to come back for that. For now, if you're enjoying the content, please do the like, the share, the subscribe, all that kind of stuff. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.